Some of you might know me or my company, Recruitment Expert. Many of you, well, not many, some of you are recognized from last year's ABE as well. For those that don't, look, I'm an accountant myself, I'm a CPA, I'm a recruiter. I've been doing it for well over 15 years, so I've recruited thousands of people into public practice, that's all I do. So I'm kind of the coalface of all the issues you guys face, which is recruitment and the chronic shortage that we've been experiencing in the last 5+ years. So some of the things I'm going to talk to you about would be the current issues and trends in the marketplace, what some firms are doing that's making a difference and doing it much better than others when it comes to recruitment and retention. And that's monetary and monetary, because I think when you do stuff, especially for accountants, it costs a lot of money if you really want to do it, you know. It's a bit of presentation there. And the third thing would be what changes you can make to improve your recruitment and retention strategies. So statistically, recently we've had probably the highest job mobility of the last 10 years with something like 1.3 million people changing jobs in recent years. And the market still is extremely tight. The candidate salaries are still ridiculous. As you know, like some of them are beyond disbelief. I remember last year I had this 3-year business services tax person. She got a job at 95 plus super with 3 years experience in a Sydney firm. She was calling me 3 months into the job asking for a new job because she found that the place was too small. They obviously overpaid to attract her because smaller firms have to come up with something sometimes. And she found it too small and she was already in the market looking for a new job. And that 95 was actually a 25 grand pay rise for her, which is astronomical. Despite all that, we still managed to get us 3 job offers in 1 week. That's what the market is like. Like, she was a good candidate, but 3 years experience at 95 is a bit mind-blowing. Anyway, so look, I always counsel candidates to remember there is a nexus between salary and expectations, which some of them forget. And those that ignore my counsel, usually I find they call me back 6 weeks later saying they've been terminated and they haven't passed probation. And I'm kind of like, I told you so. Accountants is a very numbers focus. It's kind of also a black and white job. Like, either you can do the job or you can't. You can't kind of fluff it for too long. So, one of the things I tell my clients is, it always cracks me up. You know the old adage of hire slowly, fire fast? I think I definitely recommend that. Like, take your time, don't rush things. Be quick because candidates are not going to be on the market, but don't rush things where it's like you feel compelled. You can still do your full process in a short period of time. I've had clients that do 2-3 interviews and a test within a period of 24 hours. They just get a candidate morning, a lunch, and then an afternoon one next morning and a test. You can still be following your process, but don't rush and make the wrong decision, and make sure you test people as well. Because the quicker, you know, I found one of the biggest differences this year and like 2 years ago, people are getting a lot pickier with who they hire. Yeah, they're being a lot more selective, probably because they've been ripped off and burned by shitty candidates and very hefty recruitment fees, so don't blame you. Now, there's an interesting stat that I found from CPA that in the last decade leading up to 2020, accounting firms took in 19% fewer graduates. So that's fewer grads progressing through the system. So no wonder nobody can find this elusive 3-year senior accountant. They're like an extinct species, basically. We've got way less grads, but even more importantly, like half, I'll give you a stat. Yeah, accounting grants have almost halved in the decade to 2020. Halved. But accounting firms haven't halved, have they? There's more and more accounting firms. There's more and more clients and businesses starting, and populations are growing, so therefore there's more clients. But accounting grants have halved. Isn't that nuts? Doesn't it? That automatically tells you what the problem is, right? Anyway, accounting just isn't sexy. But there's other issues. If you look at the graduate salaries for accounting versus teachers, engineers, architects, tens of thousands different. Plus the image of accounting. So there's definitely an image issue and there's definitely a salary issue. So I don't know how, when that's ever going to change. I know there's a lot of bodies doing work on that, you know, CANZ, CPA, etc. But I feel like the solution has just been, oh, well, let's just bring in more migrants. The problem is most of those migrants don't get hired because culturally, English-speaking skills, etc. As you all know. So there is like a solution that I'm seeing a lot more firms go to, which is, yes, we say there's a shortage of accountants, but there's a shortage of accountants in Australia. There's millions of accountants happy to do the work overseas for stuff that the graduates here would be like, I'd rather be working in a bar for more money, you know? So that is an option I'm seeing a lot. Like I saw a stat 2 weeks ago, 1 in 4 accounting firms are now offshoring or outsourcing work, just out of need. Firms that I remember used to say, no way we'll ever offshore outsource, and now offshoring and outsourcing, because like we've tried to hire people, we've overpaid, we've tried everything, we just cannot find the talent, and we can't keep turning clients away forever. So something to keep in mind, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you know, I see more and more firms resorting to offshoring, and we're seeing a lot of success with offshore teams. And we've started to do that as well because of that. So we now do onshore recruitment and offshore, and we build up teams for them, and we dramatically expand their capacity, so they can service all the clients in the world. And they have a backup. You know, there's a whole backup team offshore that if someone leaves tomorrow, it's fine. Like you don't feel at a loss, especially when you're a small firm. Like let's be honest, anyone goes on mat leave, someone wants to go to London, someone wants to resign or retire or have more kids. If you're a firm of 5 or 10 staff, that's 10 to 20% of your workforce gone. So you're pretty stuffed. But if you have a team of 5 or 10 accountants offshore for the price of 1 or 2 accountants onshore, you don't really worry anymore because it's a lot of horsepower, you know? So anyway, what I'm saying is like you can achieve a lot of offshore. I'll actually give you an example. I've got a client in Sydney. He's got a ridiculous ratio of 8 to 1. He's got 8 offshore staff to 1 onshore. Okay, the most ridiculous ratio I've seen. But he charges his clients 30 to 40 grand. He just overservices the hell out of them. You know, does constant reporting. It's like having a virtual CFO service and management reporting team for all of his clients. He just has so many staff, so he can afford to do it, and has a very, very healthy bottom line. But the interesting thing is the salaries he pays to his onshore staff are astronomical as well, so he can afford to get the best quality onshore staff and have very high fee paying clients and have a lot of work, you know, capacity because of that crazy ratio. Anyway, something to think about. So if you want kind of advice or help around that, have a chat to me afterwards as well. The other thing I want to talk to you is like, people talk about culture. Is everyone here from a small firm or like under 10, 20 staff? Who's 10, 20 staff? Who's more than 20 staff? Okay. Because I find people talk about culture and look, at the end of the day, yes, it's nice to talk about it, but I find, let's be honest, most people come to work for money, you know, especially accountants. And when firms go on about culture and mission, I look at it very cynically because I find the owners are just setting themselves up for looking like a hypocrite. You know, don't get me wrong, like you can differentiate yourself, but there's probably like a handful of firms that I know that have done it really well, and the rest is just empty kind of words. You know, I feel like that encompasses everything. Because it's a very commoditized product. It's not a sexy product that we sell, generally speaking, compliance. It's very hard to get people super excited, like we're so different and we're amazing, you know. So I don't recommend clients go on too much about it or make such a big deal of it. I think just be the best version of who you are in your firm, not trying to replicate another firm that's doing something really cool or a Google or anything. Just be the best version of who you are and hire the people that work with your personality and the culture that you have, if it's a good culture. If it's a shitty culture, then get rid of the toxic people. But just do the basics well and just improve every year. Like there should be some incremental improvements in your systems, in your way, in your processes. I feel that will suffice and create plenty of excitement in the firm because there's just still a little bit of progress, still a little bit of something for everyone to work towards. We're not trying to be something that you're not. So the other thing is, I think I find like partners get confused that, there's a lot of seminars and CPD hours and they're like, we should do business advisory, we should do this extra, financial planning, we should offer this type of service and that type of service. And like, you get confused and you go in different directions, you don't really achieve that much because there are a lot of consultants and seminars out there. So just know who you are, who you want to work with, and don't grow for the sake of growing as well. I found a lot of firms spread themselves too thin. Like, I've seen way more successful firms that know what they want because the partner knows what they want to achieve and who they are. They hire people based on what works for them, instead of individuals probably not suited for their type of practice and their type of personality, and then they struggle, they hate the job, they hate managing the staff, etc. So know who you are, know what you want, don't grow for the sake of growing. You can still have a really good firm, really good work-life balance. Like the business is simple, don't reinvent the wheel. Keep it fairly simple, it works, it's been working for a long, long time, let's face it. It's another thing that was like, people going about culture and family, I'm like, yeah, let's face it, as I said, cost of living is going up, everyone comes with the money, if someone else offers them more, they'll move. In the current low unemployment rate, trust me, if unemployment goes up to 6%, you'll have a very different dynamic at work. The other thing is start with the right people for your budget. So you don't need superstars. Like there's a phrase that I like, a champion team will always beat a team of champions. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's ever come across that phrase. No? Yeah? Got a few nods. So how do we get to point two, how do we get to that? How do firms really do that really well? Like how do they create a team of champions? Well, I'd say the number one thing is, and I keep emphasizing that, is make sure you test your candidates. Yeah? A lot of firms blame the recruiter, the candidate, etc. They interviewed them. They didn't test them. You want someone to do the work. It's black and white. Create a little test. Give them an actual file. You can do it verbally, you can do it physically. Ask them a whole bunch of questions that you would normally expect your intermediate to be able to answer, the senior to be able to answer to their clients, and go, hey, here's a scenario for you. What are the issues in that? How would you deal with that? What's the advice? How would you go about doing that? How would you deal with this situation? You can do it inside the interview. Just come up with a regular list and know what the standard is for a senior, intermediate, a manager, etc. Or you can do physical tests or even like proper file computer tests. Okay? Because this is the problem. Some of the best interviewees, people that interview really well, are also the biggest job hoppers. That's probably why they interview so well, because they're always interviewing. Some of the worst interviewers, and if you're going to judge the person, are people that haven't changed a job in 10 years. So they're coming in, they're nervous, they don't know how to answer stuff, they know all the stuff technically. But when you ask them silly questions like, what do you want to do? What are your strengths? They're like, I don't know, go to my job. Like, they don't come across as well polished. Does that make sense? And if you judge them based on that, instead of judging them on the actual capacity and ability to do the work, you're not going to get a great outcome. So just keep that in mind. Another thing is for the test, I also recommend timing them, because if someone takes 3 times to do a basic, what you consider a basic task, you can say goodbye to your profitability and your dream work-life balance, your dream profits. Because it's probably going to take them 3 times as long to do it in your place as well, if they're experienced, not a grad. Don't trust the recruitment agency. They want to make a commission. Number one, most recruitment agents don't know the difference between an accounts payable person and an accountant. But point is, go back to doing your own assessment. Don't just take a face value. Just like an auditor doesn't take a face value what the client says, right? You do your own kind of verification. Don't blindly trust the candidate. There's a stat, up to 70% of people lie or stretch the truth in their CVs. 70%. Pretty high. So, something to keep in mind. Don't take everything at face value. And that's one aspect. The other aspect is, you read a CV and it says he's a client manager, she's a client manager, and they want 110K. I've had those candidates and I put them forward to 3 clients, and all 3 of them said the person is not worth more than 70, 75 because the person's been doing the same job in a particular firm, focused on a particular niche, industry. And that's all they've been doing for the last 10 years. So the level that we're at was no different to a 3-year intermediate that was getting paid 70. So he's not worth 100 plus to us. So just because the CV says a title or says they can do something doesn't mean they can do it at your level. Hence why I go back to exploring. How do you actually go about doing it? What's your workflow? What do you do with clients like this? Have you done with this scenario and that scenario? How do you go about doing it? Do you know what I mean? So it's not just the lying factor. It's also just that person thinks they're a manager. That person thinks they can do that, but the quality level is completely different. There's a silly story that comes to mind as well. It kind of is a good reminder. I can't remember where I heard it from. But it was like if I was hiring a lifeguard and I had a cat applying with 2 masters and a PhD in the latest lifeguarding techniques, and there was a wet Labrador running out of the ocean holding a rag doll, I would hire the Labrador because it's someone that's naturally suited for the job. And keep that in mind for your own staff. Look at their talents and position them accordingly in your own firm. Some people are great with clients. Some people are great just being grunts. Don't push the grunts into client work or staff management. Don't push the ones that are extroverted into grunt work, right? Like, know that inside your firm, but also the people you hire for the different positions. So always keep that in mind. What I was saying before, you don't need superstars. Accounting is not super complicated. You can build an amazing practice with just average staff. You don't need to go for amazing staff and the one top dollar. Yeah, you just have great systems and decent staff that can kind of do the job. That's enough. Because if you pay superstar salaries, like obviously you're gonna have a person with high ambitions, high expectations, more drama potentially, more risk to your business that will take your clients and move on. It's just harder to satisfy. They want faster promotions, blah, blah, blah. Plus, not great for profit. Other thing I've seen people stop doing is like, I did a traineeship. I love my cadetship. I worked full-time, I did uni full-time. I don't see many firms doing it now. Like, it used to be the backbone of the accounting industry. There's so many trainees in my day. I went to uni at night, it was full of trainees. So who has a traineeship program, a cadetship program now? One person. Isn't that nuts? One. Where the hell are we going to get our senior accountants and everyone else that we're complaining we don't have? Everyone's stopped their programs now. Even the big 4 firms have stopped it. And it's a great program. You pay them, like I was getting 20 grand a year. I was working my ass off. Great, cheap, enthusiastic labor. They can stay up all night and still go to drinks and work the next day. And usually, look, if you have an amazing onboarding program, so you have a top-notch onboarding program, you'll get 3 to 7 years out of them. A lot of them used to go up to partnership. Like a lot of the partners in smaller firms used to be trainees. Other thing is always be hiring and always operate over capacity, because say your average turnover is 20%, last couple of years I reckon it's been close to 25, 30%. You're guaranteed to lose 2 people if you're a 10 staff firm, 20 people if you're a 100 staff firm. You're guaranteed to lose them because those percentages are percentages. We're accountants. Always hire. It's stupid not to hire. Like my best clients will hire no matter if they have a position or not, because they know it's literally tomorrow someone will come in with a resignation letter. Day after someone's going on mat leave. Day after someone's going to London. So day after someone's moving to Gold Coast because they like the lifestyle there. Like hire, have overcapacity within limits. But even if you can't hire them, stay in touch with them, build a connection, take them out for a coffee once a month. Have your talent pool ready, so when you get the resignation letter, you've got Chloe that you've had 2 coffees with. You've got a relationship. She's ready. You're ready. You hire them. Do you know what I mean? Always have that going. So the best firms are always hiring, and they do use agencies. Yes, like the good thing about agencies is that you can't compete with the big 4 and the big 2 that have a talent team of 20. There's 20 recruiters working full time for them. So you need that third-party assistant. But the good thing is you get ROI. Every single candidate you hire makes money for you. It's not like a candidate in commerce where they're an overhead plus you pay the recruitment fee. So it's a kind of a no-brainer. Reward staff based on performance. I think that's really important. You link remuneration. I find hardly any candidates know that there's a direct nexus between, your write-offs, your salary, and your productivity. Like they don't get it. They don't get that the salary is directly related to the charge-out rate, and therefore if they want to make more, they just have to bill more. Honestly, I interviewed them. Very few get it. because you guys are not explaining it to them. And the thing is, if they knew that, then you can work together with them to increase their salary, which is beneficial for you, beneficial for them. It's win-win, you know. And you don't get caught in this vicious cycle of they want higher salaries, you get lower profits, you have to raise your fees, your clients are unhappy, you have to deal with that bullshit. No effort. There's a way around it. Just link it, explain, this is our process, this is how we do things. You want to earn this much? Hey, these are your billings. Let's work to upskill you. Let's work to get your charge out rate higher. Let's work to increase your efficiencies. So what I was saying before, explain the system. And also link it to performance. So yes, the salary, but also like, say you have a thing in your firm, 2.5x salary, right? If they go beyond the 2.5x, anything beyond the 2.5x, give them 10%. It doesn't cost you anything really. They've already exceeded whatever KPIs and everything is just a bonus for you. They're making more, you're making more, right? But at least you actually have a higher, more motivated, more productive team. The last two are, well, have realistic expectations. We talked about that before. And don't lowball. And I've got a couple of great memes for that as well. Some firms have very unrealistic expectations in terms of how much they want to pay and what they want in the current market. So the non-monetary benefits. That's the local income. So look, for accountants, monetary benefits obviously are expensive, but there's a lot of non-monetary benefits, okay? We've got, some of the ones that I like would be training, just basic stuff, like similar to seminars and conferences. That's not only technical focus, but soft skill focus, leadership skills, business development, marketing. Like the ROI will be huge. A, they enjoy it. B, you get a whole new skill in the firm. So just make sure you invest in people. Make sure the skills are great. They can do high value work. You can build more as a result. They're engaged, etc. Then you add that with the automation piece. So you get really good tech stack. Add it with the offshore piece. And you've got a pretty good firm that is as profitable as efficient as you possibly can get. And you're not reliant and traumatized when someone leaves, because there's a lot of automation. There's a whole offshore team behind it. And you're less likely to have someone that leaves because they're actually engaged. It's much more fun to go to an interesting thing about leadership, business development, AI than the monthly tax update. Just saying. I went to a lot of them as well, but yeah. Profit sharing works great as well, so we talked about that before. Firm does well, everyone gets goes into a pool, so it encourages everyone to hold each other accountable. Start building a highly productive team. The other things is, look, the 4-day work week, I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's too much. I know some firms are doing it, it works for some. 9-day fortnight, I'm starting to see that becoming a little bit more often. I think that will probably become mainstream in the next 5 years, I reckon. Don't know if has anyone tried it, 4-day work weeks, 9-day fortnights? No? Okay. So that's, as I said, it's getting a bit of traction, and there's obviously a huge factor in attracting staff at every level, especially those with families and millennials. Work from home flexibility is becoming a must-have, so that the point of, like, it becomes a point of attraction or retention. If one firm only does 1 day a week of work from home, another one does 3 days, I've got candidates that will choose a 3-day week, any day of the week. And you can see the stats here. It's kind of becoming a necessity. So the other thing I feel like accounting firms miss out on is the flexible work practices, in the sense that not just hybrid, but flexibility, where there's a lot of mums and accountants that just work part-time or don't work at all because the firm is not willing to give them that flexibility, so they can just pick up the kids, drop off the kids, and finish the work after dinner. The work gets done. So I have clients that are happy to do that because they get it, work is work. And I'll have others like, no, they need to be in the office, I need them at this time, blah, blah, blah. So like, why? If your systems are set up, especially after COVID, it shouldn't be an issue. You're missing out on a great potential workforce. And mothers are usually pretty good and committed, to be honest. They'll do their best if you look after them. Works pretty well. Fathers as well, for those blah, blah, blah. Extra leave, look, it's always welcome and it's a good differentiator. Very few firms offer it. Does anyone do extra leave, like 5 weeks or 6 weeks leave? One plate, yeah. So it's a good little differentiator. It still has a little bit of pull, not huge pull, but it does. Location independence, so being able to work from anywhere in the world, is a big plus for millennials who want to be digital nomads. I don't think it works that well most of the time, but if you have the right person that proves or has proven themselves they can work remotely really well in your firm, they're a candidate for that. Secondments are great, but usually with bigger firms, bigger clients, but you always risk losing your staff to that place, so, buyer beware. I find the usual suspects, like the gym memberships, the health insurance, income protection, car, mobile allowances, birthdays off, they're so inconsequential, they have very little pull, to be honest, when it comes to choosing one firm over another. So I can't say they're deciding factors. But look, the biggest thing I would say, like, figure out what your staff would actually value, like a simple anonymous, especially if you have a decent sized firm, simple anonymous Google form, see what your actual staff value, and therefore they value it, they're loyal, that's what you should be promoting, that's what you should be advertising, that's what you should be talking about in your interviews. Like, hey, we do this, because your staff value it, that you'll attract more people that value the same stuff. You have a bit more cultural alignment that way. It's not too hard. A big one that most firms forget about is like just simple recognition. So employees, like people need recognition, it's that intrinsic thing, right? So just the usual staff of the month, staff of the quarter, highest client satisfaction index, whoever won that, someone who brought in the most amount of clients. Simple stuff, but people need that recognition. Just a simple pat on the back, acknowledge a job well done. Improvement in their productivity. We get so caught up in work day to day, we forget that. Fair enough, 100%, but like put a reminder in your calendar once a week just to go and figure out who did well that week and just give them a pat on the back. Put it in your calendar, literally. Once a week, once a month. Reminder, figure out who it is. Yeah? That will make a huge difference in their morale. Simple, doesn't cost anything by the way as well, so you guys should love that. Another thing is obviously ensuring you have the right people, so create a positive culture, so get rid of all the toxic ones. I get asked a lot, like, are there any specific non-monetary incentives or perks that resonate well with accountants that, a small firm can do within budgetary constraints? I always say the cheapest one is great leadership, but it's also the hardest one. It's really hard to be a good leader and create a cohesive work environment, but it's also probably one of the most effective. The best and cheapest ones are, if I have to summarize it, flexible work schedules, location dependence, and profit share. The other thing I like to talk about is engagement. So it's the biggest, probably retention piece. Like, how many of you feel you have an engaged workforce? Some? Okay. I don't know whether I'm just like asking someone who do you think you're a good driver? 90% say they do, but look, if you look at the stats, Gallup, which is fairly reputable, 10 to 20% of staff actually are engaged. That means 80 to 90% of staff do not feel engaged, which means they don't really want to be there. You kind of then go back to the first slide I used to show you, or I showed you. No wonder the majority of the workforce is looking for a job or moving jobs, right? So look, if you take away three things today, it's link salaries to performance, test your candidates, and differentiate yourself with some non-monetary benefits that are pretty easy and cheap to implement. If any of the above resonates with you and you want help with setting up your offshore teams, automation, business advisory divisions, if you guys are that way inclined, or just have a nice honest sounding board from someone who knows the industry inside out, that's me.